get those hands up. Everybody to the right. There we go, to your other right. Put those hands on those hips. Let me hear ya. Yeah, and touch those toes. Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys have a good morning session already? Did you guys refresh your brain to fill it back up? Or you just refreshed it with coffee? Staying warm. I see you guys in your shawls and sweaters and your jumpers. You guys know how we keep the room. I love it when people come up to me, Angie, can we turn the temperature up? It's too cold. That's a Brad Sugars rule. That's a no-no. Whoops, I said no. Anyway, all right, you guys ready for the next session? All right, it's a pleasure to have Mr. Stephen Hightower. We're excited to have him on sales entrepreneur. So Michael, roll the video.
I started as a janitor, and I started cleaning floors and toilets and doing those things that most people would never even dream of doing, but I wanted more. So I started to sell industrial materials and supplies along with the janitorial services. And that was my first entree into something bigger.
And something bigger was just around the corner.
At that particular time, the state of Ohio had a program to sell gasoline. And so I purchased 5 tractor trailers. And we actually began to haul jet fuel. And that's how I converted from selling other products and supplies to actually selling petroleum.
Got a client that's looking for about $250 million insurance policy for jet fuel.
In 1984, Hightower's Petroleum Company had 2 employees. That was me and an accountant. I remember when our first $100 bill came in, we got our first $100 bill. And I just remember our excitement for getting that first $100. And from 2 people, we grew 1 contract to being able to manage all over this country.
Let's go get it. Let's go get it. All right, let's go.
To this day, our business is continuing to have double-digit growth. Last year, we did about $350 million in revenue, and we continue to increase our gallons. So this year, we'll probably do closer to $500 million.
Blue Collar Millionaires, narrated by Tim McGraw. Premiere episodes Wednesdays at 10. See.
Let's give a warm welcome for Mr. Stephen Hightower.
Good morning, everyone. It comes as a very exciting pleasure to be able to come up here before you today after, just going through life as I do on a daily basis. It's just like overwhelming. But then when I see this crowd out here, I say to myself, what can I bring to these entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, to make something in their life better? And I start with my story, because my story was just humbly working in a family business. And in that family business, my mother and father started in 1957 a janitorial business. And I literally grew up in business. So from 1956, when my father started the company, which is the same year I was born, I say I've been in business all my life, because I never actually went and got a job. But when I was 6 and 7 years old, I was doing baseboards, because they didn't have a babysitter, so you'd be cleaning with your parents. And then as you grew up and you see on the kitchen table when the accountant comes and the employees are paid, my mother's writing the checks from home, you kind of learn at a very early age some basic business principles. And it was those principles that I utilized to continue to grow. And at some point in time, I knew that I wanted more. But let's start about how and where does a guy like me come from in Middletown, Ohio. And my story is not unique to many of you out here from a small town, USA, and growing up and having that first opportunity to move into a nicer neighborhood at a very early age, when probably at the 6th grade, I was the only African American in the school. And but in 7th grade, still the only African American in the school, we flew to Europe. And I went to 7 countries in Europe. And from those types of experiences, I've always been international because I learned it at a very early age. And what we seem to find out is that exposure gives you the ability to see what's possible. And so what I'm getting ready to hopefully take you through is a journey of what's possible. And so when I see the billboard out there from 0 to 6 billion, I say that's karma. Because I'm not at 6 billion yet, but I got a plan. And that plan is a plan that can work. Because one of the basic things that you have to do in terms of being in business is being able to count how you're going to get to your $1 billion, or be able to count to how you get to your $1 million. You know that you can't be a beautician and cut or do maybe 5 heads a day, 10 heads a day. If you did it 7 days a week and you charge $100 per head, you still won't get to $1 million. So you got to be able to count your money and how you get to where you got to go. So it also gets back to what kind of businesses that you may want to actually get involved with. And I am a pure entrepreneur.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Actually, I kind of think that I'm a little sick. They call me serial entrepreneur because I never knew when to stop. And I say that because I haven't stopped. I continue to grow to get to the goals that I've set forth. And 6 billion is right in front of me right now. And it's right in front of me right now because I was very intentional about where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there. But the road is not easy to get to wherever you've got to go. So let's talk about one of the basic things that, in terms of starting businesses. Many of you may want to be a consultant. Many of you are consultants. And I say to people who want to get in business and, what is it that I want to actually do? Well, I'm a consultant. This is what I did all my life. I know it as well as anybody else. And I'm going to go into the market. Well, what happens when you get sick, injured, or you can't go to work? Your money is limited because it's limited to you. What if I sold a product that, I don't care whether it was residential, commercial, industrial, government, whomever, that somebody would buy my product, and more customers than I could ever think about. And so I used the analogy of toilet paper. Toilet paper, each and every one of you use it. And I don't care what industry or your household, toilet paper has so many different types of customers. And I said this one day, and somebody said, well, what about the machines to make the toilet paper? Well, you only got maybe 4 customers that can actually sell the machine to make toilet paper. But toilet paper itself, you got an unlimited amount of customers. So you look at fuel. Fuel has an unlimited amount of customers because everybody uses petroleum. Residential, commercial, industrial. So when you start thinking about a product that somebody's going to not just use today, but they're going to use tomorrow. And I can sit here right now and tell you that every 7 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm dropping a load of fuel. So if I get sick, or if I want to stand here right now, I'm still making money because I set myself up to be able to do that. And so the next question comes to, how do you get there when you don't have any money? And most of us, and I'm not going to say most of you because I don't know your situation, but there's many, many people who say, I would love to get into business. So let me go put in my business plan. I go to the bank, talk to the bank president. I give them a good presentation and speech, and then they say, no. Then what do you do? And that's the situation I found myself in, is the bank still said no. So that's where I start, because you have to be creative, but you got to have enough tenacity and enough heart to take yourself through those times where don't nobody believe in you. And when you were a janitor in Middletown, Ohio, there was nobody going to do business with me as a petroleum company because you're a janitor. And they could not visualize you moving into a space that was not how we know you. So literally, when I got my first contract, I was just selling industrial materials. The state of Ohio, actually what got me involved with industrial materials was selling to Ford Motor Company in their Sharonville plant, just selling to that region different industrial products. And then the state of Ohio had a set aside, and they started setting aside different commodities in 1981. And they would set aside guardrail, we'd quote that. They'd set aside pinto beans, we'd quote that. They'd set aside tables and chairs, we'd go out and get a manufacturer, we'd quote that. We were just very transactional. And one day, they set aside fuel. And I'm looking around and like, let's find a fuel supplier. Because again, as long as you've got a contract big enough, and this is very, very key, as long as the opportunity is big enough, you can find a supplier to support it, if you make sure that supplier can get paid. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that, on how do you get a line of credit when you can't get a line of credit, okay? And so these are the kind of strategies that one has to become a little bit open to saying, I want mine. I'll make sure my supplier gets theirs, but I want mine. But that supplier's not going to be interested in a guy with 4 trucks. All right, that's not going to enter me into the business. But my first contract was the entire state of Ohio, and I knew nothing about fuel. But what I did know was how to pay my bills. I did know how to invoice. I did know how to find the right supply chain partner to be able to perform at a level in which it represented me in the way I wanted it to be represented. And that particular supplier that we first did business and got that contract in 1981, we still do business with that supplier today. And you know why? Because we didn't mess it up. And as you go along through life, the integrity, it's not the money. I never had enough money to do what I needed to do. I had enough desire and heart to make it happen regardless. And that's where you have to be. It's here. It's not always right here. It's here. Who's going to go through what you have to go through? Get where you've got to get. And this is what the game of business is all about. It's not a give me unless you're inheriting something and then you just walk into it. But if you're going to build a business from scratch, you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some challenges. And your biggest challenge is, how can I grow? How can I multiply myself to be able to do the entire state of Ohio? How can I grow to be able to do every state in the United States? First, you got to visualize it. I sit in my chair, and I have a map in my office, and it's a map of the world. And at that particular time, all I was looking at was the United States. And I said to myself, I wanted to do business in every state in the United States. Did not know how, did not know when, did not know where, but that's what I wanted. And you've got to be able to understand that, first of all, you got to speak it, and then you've got to take some action to begin to look at how you're going to be able to get there. And believe me, there's always more than one way in order to solve a problem. There's always more than one way to get funding and financing. One of the things I did very early, and this is no secret, lockbox. I did not have the financial wherewithal to hold thousands and millions of dollars for that first contract in the state of Ohio. But there's an instrument called a lockbox, and it's controlled in a commercial bank in the Treasury Department. And as long as I was able to go to my supplier and say, look, we'll put an instrument where the monies will go into this account, you will be able to sweep yours, and I get mine. That was a credit instrument, non-traditional, that got me started. And I began to grow my business because the majors wouldn't do any business with me. I went to Exxon, sent my financials. The lady laughed and said, I thought you was missing some zeros. I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, I'll take that for right now. But then I grew a little bit more, and I got PNC Bank to send me a letter of credit. Sent that to Exxon. Exxon says, your bank is too little. This is not a business where you are welcomed in, all right, without having the financial wherewithal. But that didn't stop me. I put as many different suppliers and lock boxes in place and knew how to go get a customer because the end game is always the customer because that's what pays you. Those are your bosses every day. And somebody who's going to get in business and don't think they have a boss, you don't know how to make money because that's how you're going to get paid. And those are the people that you got to cater to. And when they say jump, you jump. And when you do that, you get more and you get more. So now, if you just use that one little tactic on a credit instrument that didn't require a line of credit, it didn't require a balance sheet, it required your supplier to be comfortable enough that they would get paid. That's the only reason why they want a letter of credit to start with. They want assurance that they can get paid. So taking something from nothing and being able to build it in a manner, you have to understand what is scaling and how do you scale. I learned a long time ago in dealing with Ford Motor Company, supply chain management. And what does that mean? That means that I have customers all over this country. I buy fuel, gasoline, diesel, DEF, ethanol, anything in that refined products category. We're able to go to a terminal, buy that product at that terminal, send a truck in, and then deliver it to our end customer. When we started General Motors, and let me tell you what we do at General Motors, and then I'll tell you when we started General Motors. We provide the gasoline, the 5 gallons that goes into every GM vehicle that comes off the assembly line in every plant in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. But how did we get that? Probably 5 years before we got that opportunity, we went through a process of getting the product approved to the point that Shell, whose product we put forward, the guy said, they just playing with you. If they want to do business with Shell, they'll come to me because he was a salesman and he was Shell. He had Shell on his chest, all right? He wouldn't help me. He wouldn't support me. But there was a Shell representative at GM that was in lubes, not in fuels, a whole different silo, that kept supporting me and kept on feeding me the data that I needed to get that product approved, all right? And it became our deal. So we finally, after 2 years, got the product approved. And then I'm knocking on the door. Ready? Another year go by, knocking on the door. Buyers change, vice presidents change, everybody that put you in that whole sector has been turned over. And now you got to start all over again. And starting all over again meaning that you had to make new relationships at that particular time for people who didn't even know who you were or how you got there. But then something happened. And this is where most of you will make your money in times of conflict. They were going into bankruptcy in, 2008? And they finally get the call. Steve, are you still interested in doing business, selling us fuel? Why was that? Because BP was kicking them in the teeth, putting them on cash, got to pay me in advance. General Motors don't like being treated like that. But that was the condition you're in when you're in bankruptcy. I don't care how big you are. BP's bigger than they are. In fact, BP's bigger than most anybody in this country. So an account like a GM, they treat them like they treat Hightower. But GM didn't like that. So they came to me and we agreed that 1 month after bankruptcy, we would take on the fuel. Well, those of you that may know, GM put their bankruptcy off for 1 month. And they gave me a call, called me in and said, we've got this program that you will only be exposed for the week before we actually close. So if you start now and we go for a month, only the week prior you would be exposed. So what, $250,000? For me still, no, I'm not sure. I'm going to go bankruptcy, I'm going to start. I said, give me a letter of credit. And so this was a Monday. And they called me up in Detroit. I said, if you give us a letter of credit, we can start. Well, we'll give a letter of credit to our existing supplier if we want to give someone a letter of credit. Look, we need something. I called to his boss's boss and said, look, we want to do this. We asked for a letter of credit. They said no, but they give it to their alternative or existing supplier. So Wednesday evening, I get a call at 5:30 that evening and said, Steve, are you still ready to start? Would you go if we were able to give you the letter of credit? I said, yes. Will you be able to go Friday? I said, if you get the letter of credit on my desk by Friday, we'll start by Friday. 48 hours for every plant in the United States, every GM plant, St. Louis, New York, Texas, Cincinnati, everywhere, Detroit, Mexico. And you cannot just take any product, you got to take a spec product. So we had Shell. Shell could not move that fast, so they allowed us to buy BP product in the interim, but in 48 hours, I called one guy, and that was Keenan Advantage, Dennis Nash, somebody that I'd done business with prior to that for years. And I had every truck handled all across the country. Immediately, I went into a supply chain. How would I be able to scale that many trucks, that many people per truck, all the way across the country if I did not use the supply chain? So I tripled my capacity just by having that relationship and subcontracting the freight, but then having the terminal set up where we could buy the product and have our carriers go in and get it. So in 48 hours, we started GM. We never missed a beat. And today, it's one of our best customers. And not only today are they a good customer, we don't even have to bid no more. It's just a preferred contract. Those are the kind of things where you have to take risk. But how would you be able, as an individual with just 4 or 5 people around you, be able to jump and open up every state? I mean, all these GM plants all at once. You've got to understand the value of having a supply chain. And that supply chain is not a 2-cent supply chain. They don't want a $5 opportunity. They want millions of dollars of opportunity. And as long as you can get that customer, if you have the ability to focus in on the customer, not necessarily the supply, those are relationships. Those are industry relationships that you've got to do along the way. But if you got the customer, you can get the support in the supply chain. We're not a refinery. We don't make gasoline. We buy gasoline like every other wholesale distributor in the United States. Our customer base looks like FedEx. We do initial fills with Nissan. We do initial fills with Honda. We do AK Steel. We do, just from California, we have over 200 customers. We buy from Exxon today. We buy from Marathon today. They all do business with me today. But that was after crawling and after showing up in rooms and being said, you want a meal? No, that's not really why I'm here. Okay. I'm here to try to learn how to do business. How insulting might that be if you are showing up to do business with a major oil company and the only thing they look at you and say, are you here for a meal? No, I'm here to do business. And this is something that I had to go through time and time again. But you know something? It was not near as hard as it was for my father, who did this in the 50s. And when I had an opportunity to do business with and scale to a national basis in the utility industry, Duke Energy is my customer. But it was first Synergy. And we used to do 1 drop of fuel, a load, in Cincinnati in 1 tank every day, every month, once per month. And that was what they called their minority participation. No matter how much I struggled and I tried, we want to do more, we can do more, blah, blah, blah. We got 1 load once a month. No more opportunity but that. But then, this is in the early 80s, and we started having technology. And the petroleum industry is a little slow to change. And so I was a little bit more nimble, and I began to use technology. And what we got was a software called Pantelis, all right, which was an e-marketplace. And we tied into that e-marketplace that was selling to 32 utilities. And we were the first to that e-marketplace because we had the technology of FuelQuest. And by being there first to market, Exxon, Mansfield, and Chevron had to come and do business with us. So I'm sitting down now on this side of Pantelis, and Chevron wants access to 32 utilities in the marketplace. But in order for them to get there, because we had early adoption of technology, they had to reach that platform through Hightower Petroleum. And that's what gave us the model to scale nationally. And so you have to learn how to multiply yourself. And it's all called supply chain management. It's not hard. It's not brain surgery. It's a matter of getting the resources as your subcontract. You do not have to give up equity to have a supply chain partner. They are a subcontractor. And so that's the first thing people run to is, I gotta, I need an investor, I need an investor. I never had an investor. To this day, now I'm gonna get to, but to this day, as we sit here right now, I'm 100% owner of Hightower Petroleum Company, and as many times as I needed money and actually tried to get money, but saw that if I took it, they'd end up taking my business, and I ended up not taking it, I survived the next day. Many of you are going to get up and you're going to say, I don't have payroll. These bills are coming in. What am I going to do? You get up and you do twice what you did yesterday. You do 3 times what you did the day before. And you work harder, you work smarter, and it will manifest. Because as long as you don't die, you got an opportunity to do something different. And that's where I'm at. As long as God give me a breath for tomorrow, I'm going to reach my goals. And I'm going to do the things that I have vision to do. So it was ironic when I walked in here and I saw on this sign, 0 to 6 billion. And I did not know that until I saw that sign. And I am not doing 6 billion today, but I've got a $6 billion plan today that we will have. We're, for the first time, going to market in international markets, financing to be able to go upstream. So today, a load of fuel costs me $30,000, a big transport. A little one costs me maybe $15,000, a little short truck. A load of crude oil costs me $50 million. LNG cargo, $50, $60 million. Banks look at, like, here we go again. But I can count to $6 billion with the number of customers that I can bring on that we've already got. We've already engaged with the Chinese. We've already got a contract to sell LNG with the Chinese, a 15-year contract, 100,000 metric tons a month of LNG. We've already got a refinery that we're closing the final contract for hopefully this week to sell 1 million barrels per month of crude oil. Start looking at the numbers. By year 3, you're beyond $6 billion. And these are contracts that we now have. And the only thing that we're working out now, and because these contracts are solid, with solid customers, with contracts, I can now go to the international banks, the cities, and the people, Bank of Montreal and Bank of America. All of these companies now are saying, we think that's a good news story. Goldman Sachs says, we think that's a good news story. We just put our plan out into the street yesterday. And everybody's bidding on the opportunity to do business with Hightowers for that expansion that we're currently in right now. So I didn't see that sign says 0 to 6 billion, and I didn't give them that number. But that's karma. You gotta speak it. You gotta think it. You gotta intentionally try to become a billion-dollar company. You will not get there by accident. You have to be very intentional. And you gotta be intentional to go beyond. And when you don't have anything else, integrity and keeping your word will take you much, much further than anything else that you would ever be able to offer financially. Because if you had all the money and you were rotten, nobody would want to do business with you. And that's what I found, and that's what's allowed me to continue to be that supplier in the United States. Nationally, nobody else looks like me in that industry that can do what we're doing, but that's okay. That doesn't bother me because I learned the game. And every business that you're in has a game. It has a uniform. I show up as a CEO because I want to do business with the Procter & Gamble's. I want to do business with the General Motors. And what does their CEO look like? I don't show up in a polo shirt because when I show up in a polo shirt, I'm just another brother out here, showing up. Really. And if you don't believe it, being accused of stealing your own plane ticket just because I had on shorts and sandals, I don't even travel with shorts and sandals no more. Life deals everyone a different hand. But it doesn't matter what other people say they've got for you. It's what you've got in your own mind, and more importantly, what you have in your own heart. And I've never, never, ever let anyone stop me from reaching my goals. A lot of people are so afraid to get involved with business because of failure. I got kids at home. I can't, they're not out of college. I had 4 kids by the time I was 23. I did not have a lot of money, okay? But I never went and got a job. And there was times where my ex-wife said, you need to go get a job. And then my mother said, you need to go get a job. Financials was looking pretty bad. My accountant said, Steve, I think you need to go get a job. When the IRS said, and this is fact, I'm not making this up, Steve, you need to go get a job. It was only my father who gave me the encouragement to keep doing what you're doing and to stay focused and to keep on going. And I never went and got that job. And I knew when I was 18 years old that if I went to Armco Steel, was a steel mill in Middletown, that at the end of that, I'd have me a gold watch and a pension. 30 years later, I'm thinking this at 18. 30 years later, I was right. I would be better off if I worked for myself for 30 years than if I worked for Armco. And I didn't go into that plant because they didn't want to accept me as a salesperson. So for me, there was no other choice. And as a result, it just takes time. It just takes persistence. It takes integrity, time integrity, your word, not sharing information, being able to be a leader. And a leader is not a title. Just telling you that you're president just because you want to put president behind your name is not leadership. Leadership is getting up before everyone else, working harder than everyone else, working consistently day in and day out than anybody else in your organization. And when they see that kind of energy, you will get that kind of energy from your employees. And if you don't have that kind of energy from your employees, you change them. You know what it's like, many of you that may have a family business, and how do you train or get your kids to get involved with the business? Here, you had my mother and father start a janitorial business, and all of us grew up working in that business. Not all of us had the same mindset to keep on going because other elements enter into life. You know, all my brothers didn't have their head in it. They wanted to be in the streets. And so they stopped working because that wasn't cool. They couldn't be with their friends. So I fired them. Fired my sister. My mother knew when to quit, okay? But you got to set a standard for what you will deal with, because everyone around you will not do if nobody else is doing. If that person happens to be your daughter and they're a screw up and you're going to let them every day come in when they want to come in and screw up every day, your other employees is going to bleed. So you got to have a discipline, even if it's your family, to be able to say that either you can, either you will, or you have to go. And one key thing about starting a family business, you got to start them young. I started young. And when you're young, you're impressionable. So what my father was out there doing, I was jumping in the car with him, okay? It was very impressionable. But by the time they're 21, 22, their impressions are someplace else. Somebody else impressed them. So if you want to have a family business and have your children in it, when they're 13 and 14, expose them to the business. Get them started at an early age, and then they'll know how to work. Working is not an automatic thing. You've got to be taught how to work. And if they're just going to be, you know, you guys just do your own thing, and the generation after my kids, most of my grandkids come from one daughter. She has 3, but she did not, I can't make her have her kids do the right thing and come into work. So they're not in. And there's nothing I could do about that because there's a separation there. I'm not their father, I'm their grandfather. And if their parents don't want to invoke that type of training at that particular time when they can, you'll never have an opportunity to do it again once they get old, grown, and start doing their own thing. So those of you with family business, how do you be successful? I had my kids. So I've got 2 sons, a daughter, a nephew, and my father, who is 87 at the end of this month. He comes into work every day. He's at work at 7:15 every day. He beats me in. He doesn't do much anymore. But it keeps him vibrant. It keeps him alive. About 4 months ago, my mother died. She was our rock. My father didn't start the business without her. They started the business. She was the bookkeeper. She was the bill collector. He was the salesperson. He was the one out there in the field. It was not one without the other. A lot of you will go through that time. All of us will. All of us will. But you take what you got in those lessons when you can get them, and you remember those lessons forever. And you understand the basics of being a good person, just basics, being a good person. Because I can go and sit down with anybody out here, and if I'm not a butthole, pretty much we're going to get along. But if I sit down with any one of you and I a butthole, you not only don't want to do business with me, you don't want me around you. So we talk about how to win friends and influence people because that's very important. It's very important that you go and you actually understand that you're not in charge as it relates to you running your business. Your customers are in charge. And I say that over and over again because without my customers, I'd be sitting possibly out trying to figure out how I can get business. So those are just a couple nuggets that one might want to think about relative to how are you going to approach. And corporations, they say it takes about 7 sales calls in order to be successful on the average. I do business in South Africa now, okay? It's a long sales call, 16 hours one way on a flight. But if you think you're going to show up in an international environment and you're going to do business just because they met you and you gave them all of this little hocus pocus, it's not going to happen. It's still going to be relationships. And it's relationships that has to be built. It's trust that has to be developed. And it's integrity that when you said that you were going to do something, that you were actually able to do it. And it's the same thing all over this world. People do business with people that they like and people that they trust. So how do you get to know people and get into a situation that allows you to get to know the industry in which you want to do business with? There's customers and there's the industry that each and every one of you are in a different industry. But in your industry, you've got a trade organization. And in that trade organization, that is where your competition is. That's where you get together and you learn at the same time those things that's in your business. And anybody that's not doing 3 to 4 times a year an industry participation into the business that you're in, you're not developing yourselves and getting deeper in that industry. Many of you might think that, well, I know what I know, but there's always more to know. Nobody ever knows it all. And then when you have your peers, you find out that your problems is not that much different than their problems, but they had a way they got around it. And that might have saved you 6 months of thinking about something that you just couldn't figure it out. You gotta be involved with your industry. Whatever that is, go. Go not just once a year, not just at the annual, go to the quarterlies. Get people to know you. I now, because I've been a part of Sigma, I've been on the board of Sigma. I ski, I dog sleigh, I do all kind of weird things that I've never done before, okay? But we've been to Turkey together, we've been to Brazil together, we've been to Argentina together, we've been all over the world together. And you get to know these people. So when you pick up the phone and you need a load in Kansas City, you've got somebody you can call, and they're not going to give you a whole bunch of questions. They're going to knock it out for you. So the 200 and something carriers that we've got throughout the United States to be able to handle all of these deliveries, they know who Hightower is. You cannot be an unknown and think that people are going to do business with you. So marketing, people do well in being quiet and being low. And I mean, sometimes you get a little niche where you make just enough that you're happy. But if you want to grow, because the one thing I know about is, as I sit here right now, 90% of my customers are being called on by somebody else. And you know what? 100% of the customers that I got, somebody else had before I took them, okay? So you have to be able to continue to be persistent, but don't forget about those that you already have. And literally, I mean, I've had customers for years. I've had suppliers for years. You don't keep suppliers if you screw them, and you don't keep customers if you don't deliver. So, all of this is just basics. It's not brain surgery. It's basics. And it's getting up the next day working harder than you did the day before. You know, I don't see failure as failure, but as a learning experience. I don't see failure as failure, but a way to practice my techniques and to perfect my performance. I don't see failure as failure, but as a game that I must play to win. Because you see, you're not judged by the number of times that you fail, you're judged by the number of times that you succeed. And the number of times that you succeed is in direct proportion to the number of times that you can fail and keep on trying. You've got to keep on, you've got to have that vision, you've got to have that heart. This is not enough. You've got to have that heart. When you don't have nothing, everything looks black, it's just not going to work. You've got to, it's only heart that takes you through those bad times. And everybody, if you're a startup or you started at some point in time, you've had some hard times. You had those days you didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. You didn't know if your existence was going to be maintained, but you didn't stop. And that's how you get there. So, it doesn't matter how old you are. Colonel Sanders, he took his Social Security after he retired and started Kentucky Fried Chicken. Doesn't matter how old you are. You know, this guy named Walt Disney went to 1,001 banks. I went to 999. Whatever it takes, that's what you have to do in order to succeed. So I want to open it up for questions. And I want to do a dialogue and try to talk about how some of the questions you have in terms of starting a business or scaling, and how do you manage the supply chain? How do you manage creative financing in order to get credit? You know, any of those kind of questions, I'm open for the audience. All these people. You know, failure, again, is a learning experience. But we just went through something about 2 years ago, and when you're running and things are good and, you know, business, every year you're growing, and then all of a sudden something happens. This happens, that happens. And I'm up against some really big companies. And when I just told you that all those automotive companies that I took, including the state of Ohio, I took it from BP. So every now and then, these guys say, I want to let you know that you're just a little, okay? And they will let you know that. We have a contract with Kroger's, the supermarket out of Cincinnati, for years. And in an index, we use what we call the Opus Index. Opus -2 is where we were, where the market was. That was really aggressive, because Opus even is still aggressive. Opus low even, okay? We was Opus low -2 underneath the market. And we were able to be successful for that in a long time. $135 million. So BP decided, I'm going to show you. They went to Opus -11 and took the contract from me. All right? Now, I felt like I was climbing a mountain, and I was hanging on with 2 fingers, okay? And you're talking about with 1 foot, the rocks are already falling down. What are you going to do? That's $135 million gone? Like, I'm not going to say that was a failure, but that was a heck of a hit, okay? But it didn't kill me. And what we did was we replaced it. And when I say we replaced it, we went out and we got busy. And all of that volume, we got all of that volume back the next year, okay? We got all of that volume, not back from Kroger's, okay? Not back from that contract. BP wanted it. They took it. They could do that. But we, this year, grew 40%. Our profitability was the greatest ever. And all of that brought us to a point where now is the time to make the big move. And so we're going into the market as a result of being hit, outrunning failure, and coming up with a plan, as well as because you had to get the contracts before you can execute on a plan that people call real. And now we're going into the market for a $200 million trade financing to be able to trade the crude and the LNG, which in value per year by year 3 is $6 billion. I don't know where that sign came from, but like I said, if you're not dreaming it, you're not thinking it, it's an aura. So I don't know if that quite answered it, but that was a pretty big hit. And a lot of people would have said, okay. Did I see a hand over here, young lady? Yes.
I have a client who reminds me of you in your younger days. Her father passed away, she inherited or really restarted his commercial cleaning business and janitorial business. And she has got many family members who are now helping her run the business. Part of why she continued it after her dad passed away was to help support her family. They are not doing the job. They're not doing the job. I heard you say fire your brother. Were you able to keep a relationship with them? If there's any advice you would give to her if she was here about her aunt and her mom and her cousin and her niece who all work in the office.
They'll kill her. They're going to take her business straight down the hole. And if she does not have the business acumen to be able to realize that until it's too late, because they're constantly eroding her business when they go out and touch a customer and then half do it or don't show up. Or, all of those things are eroding her opportunity to grow and to stay in a business. And she's allowing that. And so you, as the entrepreneur, have to be that individual that say, I'm not going to allow my sister to slam drawers and do what she wants to do, and my brother to stay out all night and don't go to work the next morning because he's whatever, okay? They will not like you as much as you would like for them to, but over a period of time, they'll get over it.
We have a question over here. Is this okay?
Okay.
So I have a question about making something happen when you have no money. We have a startup. We have 5 existing practices in Nebraska, and we're moving our model into the Phoenix market. And we have a great opportunity to purchase a commercial property at about a quarter of its actual value, but we have no money. So pretend I'm a moron. How do I convince someone to loan me this so I can pull the money out of it and move forward with the other opportunities?
Well, you do have to have a plan. And that's, while it may not be the plan that you might envision as you begin to, start your journey, I cannot go and ask for $200 million unless they can see that I've got that kind of business. And your experience in what you've already done is your leverage to show that you know how to do what you're doing. And hopefully what you're doing today is positive enough that they're able to see that growth is a natural, progression. And if it's not your local banks, go outside your local banks, because people are actually looking for real deals. And so the people that you're currently doing business with, and you say you're going into another city, go into the other city. Let them look back and see what you've done. They won't have the jaundiced eye of saying, I know you. They'll have the eye of saying, this is what you've done, this is what you want, it seems like you've done this before, then I think we can take a chance on it. And that's pretty much the way I think it is how it's going to fold out. because it's different than having a product that you can just have to finance the supply. It's land and building that you actually have to be able to purchase, and that's going to be on the basis of what you've done. And it sounds like you've done quite a bit, and it's a matter of putting the plan, letting them know that you understand the risk, you understand where the value chain is, you understand how many patients you actually are in need in order to become successful. And once they know that you know your business, your chances have risen at least 90 to 95% to be able to be successful in getting that loan.
Thank you. Have a question right here?
Right, this gentleman first.
My question is, do you have a business coach? Have you ever had a business coach for your business?
Well, I'm Mr. Seminar. Not as much as I used to, but there was no seminar that I didn't show up to in my industry, in DC, around. I taught myself by being out of Middletown to where the action was, okay, because I know that people aren't going to come to Middletown. Tony Robbins is one of my individuals that I went through Mastery University, so all of his programs. And I would have to say that that experience of going through the whole Tony Robbins, and I'm not selling Tony versus anybody else, but he changed my life. And when I was going down, that's how I turned it around. I learned about myself. I learned about how to interact with others. I learned how to interact with my family and my wife. You know, he taught you what's important. And what's important is not that car, okay? That's the least important thing. What's important is God. What's important is your family. What's important is your ability to take care of your business, and then everything else will fall into place if you start there. Okay? Go ahead. Stand up. We can't hear you. I was very fortunate. Again, I go back to my father, who gave me that opportunity to go outside of Middletown. He did his thing right there in Middletown. I went to Dayton, I went to Cincinnati, I went to Columbus. Then I started going to Washington, D.C. to start hearing a lot of things that's going on in, legislation that was coming out that would be able to help me, so on and so forth. So he allowed me to grow. And you have to have that ability to allow your kids to grow. You can't let them take you down a hole, but you got to let them grow. And came a point in time where my board, and I have a board of directors, said, Steve, you're going to have to let your son, Stephen II, grow. You got to take yourself out. And I started, they're moving me out. They're moving me out. No, move yourself up and start working on your business and not in your business. So when my father, the way that actually changed over, my mother was already pretty much out, is that we sold Hightower's janitorial service to a company in Cleveland. He went to work for that company for 1 year. When he came back, he came to work for our construction company. And that was the change of ownership when that took place. And I was then the president and continue to be the president, and he didn't have an ego. He never was challenged by that. And like I say, to this day, as long as I've got an office, he's got an office to go to. He gets dressed, he puts on a suit and tie, and at 7:30 or 7:15, he's in the office every day. So. You got to speak up, please. I don't know where the mic is, but.
I can come give you the mic real quick. 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No running shoes, heels.
I'll pay attention to the microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I would love to learn some of your daily routines and habits that you use to help set your mindset for the day.
Okay. Well, a year ago I had surgery on my hiatal hernia. So they tore me all up, tied me up. And wasn't much I could do for about a year because I couldn't strain. And since about December, and that was January a year ago, since about December, I've been getting up at 5:30 every morning and going to my treadmill. And my blood pressure was high, and I was getting a doctor. You got to get my blood pressure down. 150, 160, constantly, I'm gonna die, okay? Got to get my blood pressure down. So, lady finally said, I can keep throwing you pills, but until you change, you're not gonna change. And she said, there's things that's hereditary, blah, 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 but once I became a doctor, this is her talking to me, that when I started taking toes and shoes off or feet off because people ate so much sweets, I stopped eating sweets. If you just stop eating salt, okay? Bacon is packed with salt. Salt is almost in everything. When you stop eating salt, if you take salt out of your diet, and it's impossible to take it totally out of your diet, if you go to a restaurant, there's going to be salt in it because otherwise the food wouldn't taste good. That's what she told me. But since December, actually January, I changed the diet. I've lost 20 pounds. My blood pressure, 128, 130. And sometimes you just have to say, pills and, blood pressure pills, what can you do for yourself? And she was not my doctor. She was just a fill-in that broke it down for me and said, if you do this, the heck with those pills. And I've already come off of a blood pressure pill. I was taking 3. So what can you do for yourself? And I say the cardio exercise, the 20 minutes of whatever you want to do, the changing that diet from so much salt that's inherent in what we do every day, and just change your eating habits. I mean, I used to love sweets, I'm telling you, but you don't know me, but I'm like 21 pounds down in 2 months, okay? But I feel a lot better too. But that's what I do in the morning, every morning. That's what I did this morning. I got up and I found the room to go out and do my exercise. Forgot to bring my clothes, so I went out to Walmart last night and picked up some shorts and some tennis shoes to make sure that I was able to keep that routine. And it keeps my mind fresh. It keeps my blood pressure down as well. So, yeah.
My name is Seth Langston. I'm kind of inspired right now because I'm going through a lot of growth and trying to figure out how to work with my family. And I own an exterior cleaning company, and we're currently learning how to work with my family. I'm creating plans, and I'm interested in cleaning trucks, fleet cleaning. We already do it in town, but we have plans to go outside of there. My father actually is joining my business. I'm trying to learn how to work with him to go to companies like you to clean your trucks and clean your cylinders where you keep your oil nationwide. He just worked for a company that did that from the Mississippi River all across the East Coast with 500 trucks. And I only have 3 trucks. So not only can we clean efficiently when it comes to residential, that's where I started 4 years ago, but when you say you need to have industry-specific training, like I go to all these events and learn all this stuff and have everything jotted down, and I'm at the point to facilitating and get these people to work together to become guys like you. So it's not would you, it's when could I speak with you sometime about cleaning your trucks and helping you keep your trucks clean around the world. Well, and I hate public speaking, but literally it's like the first time I've ever public speak. So.
Well, the first question I want to ask you is, when you go to these trade shows, and I want you to answer this question real quick. When you go to these trade shows, do you go and you commingle with the other participants as competitors, or do you go and commingle with those participants as partners?
I go there and participate with partners. I literally call the experts in my field.
Let him have the microphone so other people can hear.
I go to the experts in my field. Like last week, I had to cancel a trip. It's the IWCA, the International Window Cleaning Association, and they want me to join the board, but I had to cancel it. I'm trying to deal with my 3 trucks here, build those marketing plans and gather the team while I'm designing plans with my father that's now joining on and family members. But when I go to these events, I'm gathering plans to say, I'm going to do this because I have the family skills, I have the ideas that I'm putting together, and I have not said, will you work with me? Which they will if I get people in the area. In certain areas, I've already got, hundreds of cards of people. I didn't say I would because, I'm kind of, do I want to do it in-house? Can I make it happen? Or, do I start out and kind of sub this stuff out with these guys? So I have both kind of ideas that we're gathering. Like last week, we had a multi-million-dollar window cleaning contract offer because my dad can facilitate that stuff and knows how to talk about it. Now I'm, sending guys here to get trained, and we're talking. We haven't locked it in, but literally at the point where you just started, where you got your first Ohio contract, I have multiple things like that going on, and it's when would you let me help you keep stuff clean, maybe? Okay. Talk about it.
Well, I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards, but one of the things that you may not have heard when I said how I buy product, and fuel is $2.50. Freight is 3 cents, 4 cents. So when a customer is trying to save money, freight's going to be freight, distance. How you buy the fuel is where the savings come in at. So you got to figure out what you're good at. And as I began to grow and work with these suppliers and subcontractors, I find if they were monitoring, oh, we can do that, we take it in-house. Find out that they were utilizing a certain type of technology that might be beneficial, we do that, and we bring it in-house. Today, all of the fuel activity is 100% in-house. What's not in-house is the carriers. We don't have one truck, and we drop a load every 7 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the way then you have an asset-light logistics operation on the transportation, and you have a buying operation on the fuel. And accounting takes care of both. So do what you can, expand with a partner, and take it in-house. Get the business today beyond where you're at, then take it in-house, okay? Grow off of your supply chain when you're able to. When you've got enough business to buy that next truck or to expand further, you do it. But right now, I'm paying a guy flat rate. I don't have to worry about 3 drivers a day, which pretty much to keep a truck going 24 hours, you at least need 3 drivers per truck times however many trucks we got going on out here in the country, okay? It would be impossible unless I was in the trucking business. So we're in the fuel business. And you got to know what business you're in. And early on, I used to tell my people, if all we do is bill and invoice, you better do that right. Whatever part that you play it well. Okay? Because otherwise, that little part won't grow into the next part because people won't mess with you. So as we continue to grow in the part that you did, until we got to a point where we could buy like we're doing now, we did it well. So you don't have to do everything. And you don't have to go out and make the big leap without a good solid foundation. When you've got a foundation of a few, you spread and get more business without the expense. But now once you've got the business, now you buy another truck and you start doing more of it yourself. Okay? And you grow that way, organically, rather than just stepping out on a ledge without the business. Okay? But if you get the business tomorrow, you got to go. So so that's a way. It's not the only way, but it's a way.
I'm ready to hustle and get it. So talk to you about it, hopefully.
You got a young lady here.
Okay, listening to you seem to have reinvented yourself quite a few times. How did you know when you were ready for that reinvention? And what did you do each time?
You know, in playing basketball, you got to know when to take the shot. And many times, it's a matter of going to a certain point, pivoting, coming back, and taking that shot. You got to know when to pivot. If you don't pivot in time, you can have so much business, it crushes you. Too much business without a system to manage it will put you out of business, because you don't have the support system to invoice it, to bill it, to do all the things you have to do to support that much business. So you got to know when that you're going to need more of something, whether that's accounting, whether that's marketing, whether that's just administrative support, whether that's reorganization of how you're managing your office, where you may have one person doing sales, accounting, collections, and you have two people doing sales, accounting, and collections. Wait a minute, that's not going to work. Let's split that up and have accounting and have sales separated. It's a point in time where you begin to grow that you got to understand that there's going to be when to pivot. And that's not a science, but if you don't get it right, it can kill you. And you see me talking about growth because if I'm not growing, like I say, somebody's trying to eat my lunch every day while I'm standing here. I know somebody's nibbling at me, okay? I can feel it, okay? So you gotta be steady growing, but you got to know when it's time to do things differently. And what I did at the time that I had to do it just doesn't apply to your circumstances, okay? Because everybody has their own specific circumstances. But understand, you've got to be able to see it coming when you almost have too much, and it's not to run away from it. It's to make the adjustments, whether that's through outsourcing or whether that's through bringing in additional people. You've got to know when to pivot and go into that other direction. And one of the things that you say, reinventing yourself, I don't look at me reinventing myself. I look at myself in the energy business. And you can either go wide or you can go deep. I keep using all these sports analogies. If I started selling cookies and started selling furniture and I started selling all of these other things, that's going wide. But if I take gasoline and diesel, then I start doing crude oil, then I do LNG, I'm going deep in the energy space, in that vertical. And I'm becoming an expert in that vertical. So you can continue to build and add the product categories in the spaces, but you're doing it within a category, within a silo that makes you a better expert, a bigger expert in that particular field, and not trying to go this way, but going deep. And that's what you have to really understand. Your expansion should be in congruency to your baseline. And that allows you to not only continue to bring those relationships forward, okay, but then to build others and more in that same silo. Okay. She's got one back there, and then
I got one for you.
No wonder you're so skinny. So, hi, my name is Doug Winnie, and I'm in Houston, Texas, sort of the energy capital of the world, so I'm sure you're there. Congratulations on your success, and thank you for being here today. As a coach and entrepreneur, business owner for the last 30-some years, it seems like your success is based on really one big thing that I think this audience could really benefit from. And that is your ability to think big. Your ability to say, I want to be in every state. I want to be global. How can we get that? How can I deliver that to my clients? How have you kept it and keep doing it?
You have visionaries in life. And I don't want to say I'm a visionary, but I do have a vision. And each of you have to have your own vision. But you have to have a vision that you can count, that you can get to. Like I said, it's hard to be a hairdresser and get to $1 million or $10 million because it's hard to count unless you have 10,000 salons all over the country. There's a way of getting there, but you got to be able to count it, okay? So I know that there is energy in how you think and how you process. And the things that I actually visualize, because then I figure out how I'm going to get there, they come true. But if you're not visualizing it, if you're not taking the action to figure out how I'm going to get there, and I guarantee you it's nothing like you think it's going to be when you finally get there, or even when you get the opportunity. But you're trying, and you're going in that direction, and you know that's what you want. You've got to be intentional. You're not going to accidentally get to $1 million, all right? You've got to want to get to $1 million. You can't say that I just want to spend some extra time, you know, and have more time with my wife and kids and blah, 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 so I'm just going to slow it down. That's not intentional as it relates to growing a business. So, you know, you've got to really understand what it is that you're wanting to do. You really got to visualize it, because I believe in karma, because it's all happened in that way. It's just been the energy. And just like I walked in this room and that $6 billion was there. And that's my number in my business plan, year 3. I said, where did that number come from? She said, well, I got it from somewhere. I said, damn, I'm going to get up here and they think I'm doing $6 billion. Okay. But I will do $6 billion if I live to see another day, because I'm relentless at reaching my goals smartly. It ain't like you're just going to say, I'm going to do something. It's not easy. I mean, you got to really be doing there's multiple things that's got to line up before any of this actually works. Multiple things. So you've got to be doing a lot of things. You've got to somehow have gotten to the right attorneys. Somehow you've had to expose yourself to that particular market. Somehow that financial institution had to begin to know who you are. Some way, all of those things. It's not going to happen if I sit in Middletown, Ohio. Anybody ever been to Middletown, Ohio? All right. There's 6 of us. Okay? Anyone come to see me? Doubt it. Okay? that's the only thing I'm saying is you've got to be willing to go and make things happen. Okay, you got to get out your comfort zone and you got to stretch yourself. Again, these are things that I've seen others do. There's people in here that have accomplished that very same thing through the same energy of first visualizing it and taking massive action to make it work. Action or thoughts and dreams without action, it will go to the grave with you. And like I said, the only way I get my dreams in the grave is if I don't live long enough, because I'm not stopping until I get there. Go ahead.
Just wondering if you would share how many employees you have, how you establish your culture, and how you maintain your culture.
You know, one of the things early on, because we are a family business, you know, I treat my employees, I understand they've got families. I want them to have the same insurance I want for me and my kids. I want them to, everything that I know that I want for my family, I know they want it for theirs too. And so that's the very beginning, is being able to be respectful of individuals' personal lives as well as what you want them to do here. And just, you know, once that, I guess, atmosphere is created, you can get one bad apple in there to tear it all up. And we've had that, okay? You gotta pluck that bad apple. I had a manager that was killing my people, killing my customers. He knew what he was doing, but nobody liked him, including my customers. My suppliers didn't like him. My business was doing this. All of that was happening at the same time that I happened in that same year. Okay. You have to know when to pivot. Got to know when to go get that other person. Fire somebody if they got to be fired. Okay? So again, it's not science, but it's knowing when to say when. This is the thing that you got to understand. Banks are greedy too, okay? You just may not have something big enough that they care about, okay? So it's how big a deal are you bringing to the banks that matters. And then how credible the deal is matters. Goldman Sachs, Citi, Bank of Montreal, 2 or 3 other major banks, Standard Charter, are all saying we're interested. We just sent out the packages Monday. Most of them were closed, okay? I'm here today, and I know that's coming back, okay? When you put together a solid plan, and it took me a long time to want to take on capital, but I'm not trying to take on debt. I'm not trying to take on equity. I'm looking at taking on debt, trade financing. So my offering to the banks is not for them to put equity into me. It is to provide trade financing. Now, that might be able to take place without me also having an equity partner. It might. That's the plan. Plan 2, plan B, because you better have your plan B, is to have that, you know, people really like the oil business. And someone said that Texas is the oil capital of the world. Today, that's true, but oil was started in Ohio, okay, by John D. Rockefeller. That's when it was first commercialized, and Standard Oil Company out of Cleveland is where this whole thing started. So a lot of people don't realize that it's really Ohio. Texas, I give you what you got today, okay? So I kind of got off on the. Yeah, I'm still trying to do this without selling equity. It's possible to do this without selling equity because the SBLCs from the Chinese government, okay, solid, back to back, okay? I mean, the banks that we're dealing with already do business in China in the LNG space. The legal firm that I have represents the Chevrons, the Cheniere's, and other LNG companies, so they're also my representatives, so they're kind of guiding me through this. And you show up with K&L Gates, you show up with credibility because they are the industry legal experts in that space. You know, you have to put a lot of pieces in place, and now you're over, you know, you had a great year last year. We did over 450 million, okay, last year, up from 280 the year before. Those kind of things put you in a position to be able to say, now is the time. 2 years ago was not the time. Got to know when to say when to pull the trigger.
I have a question. Wait for the mic.
Sorry.
I actually have two questions. First, how can we follow you and stay connected with you to learn from what you're doing and stuff? And then my second question was like, who are your mentors growing up and stuff? I'm 19 and I'm like, I have a coach here. His name is Reggie. He's somewhere around here. He's awesome. But I want to see like, how can we stay connected with you, and who are your mentors growing up, and who are you learning from?
Well, really, my father, and I mean, I had that opportunity, and so I can't give that to anybody else because that's what I saw. That's who I saw working 18 hours a day. 8 hours at Armco Steel, 8 to 10 hours of his own. He worked around the clock. He worked midnights. He worked all day. Went to bed about 7 or 8 o'clock that night. Did that all over again. If he worked 7 to 8, you know, whenever he wasn't at Armco, he was working his own business. So I've always seen what a workaholic or someone working all the time looks like. And so it wasn't a mystery to me, but it didn't mean that I had to follow those same steps. I've got siblings that did not follow those same steps. We both grew up in a household, parents married for 67 years, you know, all the right things, but does not necessarily mean that you're not going to get caught up by some of the elements of life. So just try to do the right thing. Find those individuals as doing what it is that you want to do, not necessarily doing exactly what you're doing. And, you know, people that's successful, your peers, you know, they're probably not mature enough to be able to really give you advice. And, you know, people look at me and, you know, I'm 60 years old, but everything that you're going through, I went through that and before that, okay? So there's really nothing new under the sun, okay? It's just a matter of finding what it is, where it's at that I really want to do, and find those individuals that's doing that. Find out what's work and what works and do that. It's very important. I want to leave you guys with something because, you know, at the end of the day, each and every one of you have to say that I am the voice. I must lead, not follow. I must believe and not doubt. I must create and not destroy. I am a voice for God. I am a leader. And defy the odds and set new standards. And each and every one of you, step up, step up, step up. Thank you very much.
Mr. Stephen Hightower. Yeah. A man of my heart doing sports analogies. Yeah, I like that. So speaking of sports, I'm not sure if you guys saw the post on who's co-hosting with me tonight. That's a bucket list checklist off my bucket list. Want to get those little ticket before you kick it, little signs, etc. Yeah, two-time Olympian, NBA Hall of Famer Gary Payton in the house tonight. We're going to have some fun tonight. Excited about that. So meet and greet with Stephen Hightower right afterwards. Make sure that you see Michael Lozier to sign up for the courses. Afternoon, we have Sherry Riley and we have Brad Sugar. So we have a fast-paced afternoon. So Sherry Riley will be coming in. We're going to take another quick break, a 30-minute break. Then Brad's going to come back in for 45 minutes because we have to be out of here at 3:30 to reset the room and beautify this room for tonight's celebration. So you guys enjoying the social cast, by the way? Yeah, so give it up for Rock the House. Just a little shout out. They wanted to say, we've all been to an event that was flat, boring, and just didn't get you engaged or exciting. Well, Rock the House didn't produce that meeting. They guarantee it. Rock the House produces live events that rock every time, specializing in audio-visual creativity through impact execution. So make sure that you give it up to Rock the House. They do all kinds of corporate events, nonprofit meetings, etc. So consider them for your next event and make it engaging like this. So make sure that on Twitter, Instagram, it's our big night. So make sure that you're on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure that you're doing hashtag BEF 2019, hashtag BEFA 2019, and let's get it all over the place and celebrate you tonight. Everybody stand up. It's time to take a lunch break. We'll be back with Sherry Riley at 1:15. What time? 1:15. Did y'all have a good meeting this morning? Did you guys have good sessions? Yeah, some dynamic sessions. Time to empty out that bucket in your head and time to go refresh to put more in for the afternoon. So let's empty it all out. Let's big, big whoosh. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, whoosh.